Oliver Platt and Jordan Wilson. We will have the SheBelieves Cup on One Soccer that is coming up on Saturday, 3 p.m. against the Brazilians. And yesterday, Ollie, we found out that the injury bug is still hungry. It just keeps on biting at this Canadian women's national team. There will be no Quinn. There will be no Olivia Smith at the tournament. The two-match SheBelieves Cup. Replacing them are Mimi Alidou as well as Emma Regan. Quinn, it was mentioned in the Seattle Reign medical report at the weekend, out with concussion protocol. We will hear more from Bev Priestman, but as that is the last update, we will assume for the time being that that is what is ailing the midfielder. So with that said, is there anything more or any more context, here, Ollie, on these injuries and what it might mean for the players as they push for spots at the Paris Games?
Yeah, I think we'll have to wait and see on both of them. Obviously, Olivia Smith in particular to see what Bev Priestman has to say and what the severity of those injuries are. Look, it doesn't help at this point in their preparations for the Olympics, right? This is a lengthy injury list that they're now dealing with. These two players aren't the only two that will be missing this camp, and so you just hope that some of these injuries don't kind of persist as they have with a couple of players like Jade Revere and Nichelle Prince, and we're not dealing with kind of a squads that Bev Priestman is trying to piece together based on who she thinks is fit and in form, and who she needs to take even if they're not totally fit and in form going into the Olympic Games this summer. It's a really tight roster, as we know, and so you kind of don't have any room to waste there in terms of players who may or may not be 100%.
Jordan, anything to add?
No, I think this is that time, right, where players have to really come in and show. But I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit, because this is a huge window, a huge opportunity for these two games. I know they're just friendlies, but when you're looking at the competition that they're about to play and opportunity with players missing, this is the time where you really need to make sure that Bev Priestman puts you on the game sheet as one of the first players. And I always look at windows as that time, right, to really cement yourself in the lineup.
Well, you'd mentioned in a little bit that we'll dive a bit deeper into some of these lineup headaches for Priestman. Let's do that right now, Jordo. And the reason I say the date every time I host this show is to make sure that when we have conversations, you know that you're watching the most recent episode of One Soccer Today, because we've had this conversation a few times. But it seems like the narrative, Jordan, just keeps remaining for another Jordan with a Y, Jordan Huitema in this case, because she has yet another opportunity with no Nichelle Prince, now with Olivia Smith on the shelf, to really cement a spot for herself and make the case to Bev Priestman that she should go to Paris. Do you think, with the injuries that we've discussed ad nauseum, that she is the most important player for Canada going into this tournament?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that has a lot to do with the potential that she possesses. And everyone talks about her, and Bev Priestman can see it, because you have moments when Canada get the equalizing goal and Jordan Huitema gets her head on it. And there aren't many players in this Canadian side that I can see having that upside with her height and the way that she's able to dribble. And when she goes into the box, what a threat she is. So she has something that other players don't have. And even here, this little clip ball by Fleming, not many players can get on the end of that, but she can. And this is probably my favorite, right? When you need a moment for someone to step up, Ashley Lawrence and her have that connection. Huitema gets up strong, puts it past the American. This is what she can do. But on the contrary, we've seen her just be a bit tentative, be a bit lost, kind of look a bit naive, being maybe young in her game. And that fall off doesn't need to be so large. I don't think it needs to be 9 out of 10 when she plays, and then 4 out of 10 when we're kind of asking, like, what's going on with Jordan Huitema. She needs to find a solid 7.5 and 8, and that needs to be her standard. And you always find with players too, and I found this in my career, is that I've had coaches tell me, like, when you're in a position, if I'm playing defensive midfield or if I'm playing center back, I can't be the best player one day and then the next day be the first one off the game sheet. You need to find that sweet spot, that 8.5 out of 10, whatever it might be for the person, where there's just something you're contributing to the team. I think with Jordan Huitema, I'm looking at these next two games, and this needs to be the time where, okay, maybe if she's not scoring goals, or maybe if it's not working for her on the day, like, add something else to your game. I think with her, that is her size and her presence. Maybe it's setting up other players, doing those decoy runs, but she has to be the first. I think Deanne Rose as well is a player that Bev Priestman knows and Canada knows, and you know what she's going to bring in terms of her pace and the way that she can attack and stretch a line. But these two games at a time, because you're playing good competition, Brazil, then hopefully maybe a Japan or the US, and you want some revenge. But these are those games where a Deanne Rose and a Heidemann need to be far ahead of a Viens and a Laracy. I think they're already there in terms of the way that they play, but you have to go out and prove it. And I want to see more of a competition within this Canadian women's national team. Like, yes, we talk about the players that we think should be there, but it should be a resounding yes from how they play. And specifically, Jordan Heidemann is the most important player to see, because we sometimes see the talent and we talk about the potential, but I want to see a 10 toes down saying, I want to be that person that plays there and gets the job done. So we hope that happens in the next couple of days.
And Ollie, just to set you up this way, I think for Jordan too, and I don't want to speak on her behalf, but we remember that she wasn't named to the Tokyo Games. She got in with the extension with the COVID procedures and roster rules with it. So you would think that she'd be hungrier than ever to go out and carve this spot for herself.
Yeah, it's a big summer for her for sure. I do think that she's playing her best football in a Canada jersey that I've seen. It's been 7 years now since she came into the team, I think, which is crazy given she's 22 years old. But since the World Cup, I think this is the best I've seen from Jordan Heitzmer, and specifically the best against some difficult opponents. You know, I think she's always had the ability to score goals, maybe against some of the weaker teams in CONCACAF, and we know the quality shines through there. But it's about just making an impact against the top teams and really adjusting to that level of play against experienced players. And I do think she's starting to do that. So there is going to be big minutes, I think, for her at this tournament, at the Olympics as well. The way I kind of see it right now is I think she is the fourth player in a 3-person attack. I think Leon, Lacasse, and Prince are the first choices there. But as we've seen, when you need to rotate a tournament or when you get injuries during a tournament, that player becomes a pretty heavy usage player and pretty prominent very quickly. So I think Heitzmer has a big summer in front of her. I had the chance to sit down and speak with her in San Diego at the Gold Cup, and she seemed to be in a very good place, more mature, more comfortable. I think obviously the move coming back to the NWSL has helped her a lot in her confidence in that regard, just to be playing week in, week out as well. So fingers crossed that she's ready to deliver, because I think she's looked more ready than she has been to this point than I've seen her in a Canada shirt.
And oftentimes when we do get the chance to be around the team and to interview them, when you see Jordan Heidemann, you often see Julia Grosso not too far away. The two of them are almost inseparable in those camps. And she's an interesting one, Ollie, with that injury to Quinn, because I think it was just a few days ago we were talking about what does the best midfield look like with how well Simi Awujo has brought her name forward, and Jessie Fleming, of course, being a shoe-in, and now Janine Becky's back around. With Quinn's absence and the very specific type of midfield player that they are, how does this affect Bev's tactics? Because it seems like we have to see a lot more Julia Grosso just with the personnel that are available.
I think Grosso should start against Brazil. Like, if we're being honest here, like hoisting the SheBelieves Cup, we don't really care. It's not a primary objective for Canada this summer. This window is about experimentation. It's about getting a proper look at players, and maybe some players that you didn't get to look at during the Gold Cup as much as you would have liked, or however it panned out. There seemed to be some hint of maybe an injury issue with Grosso at the Gold Cup, so I'm not sure how much that affected things, but she's a really talented player. And I think right now she has fallen behind Quinn and Awujo a little bit, as well as obviously Jessie Fleming. And that does put her place on an 18-player Olympic roster into question. There's no doubt about that. So she has work to do, but you've got to give her that window and that opportunity to do it, because there is a load of quality there. And if you're going to leave her off the plane to these Olympics, you've really got to be sure that you're making the right decision. So whatever happens against Brazil, which is an opponent we know they've played multiple times, they're going to get another quality game against the US or against Japan. So I don't think the result matters hugely in this game. I would like to see a player like Julia Grosso really get a run and really get an opportunity to show what she can do here.
Well, on top of that, audition time for some of these players, Jordan, I think mentioning the players that have been included due to injury, Emma Regan and Mimi Alidou, if you're Bev Priestman, do you give them a run out and let them really show what type of role they can fill? Because it's got to be getting down to crunch time for Priestman to really start to finalize this Olympic squad.
Oh, it is crunch time. I think players need to make it hard on a manager. Like, I look at the Gold Cup and I was a bit disappointed. I was riding the wave off of Olivia Smith because I said, this was someone that needs to play. But Mimi Alidou, she was right there as well, because I think she's a technical footballer and I think she would add something different. I also think maybe she falls into the the trap of the formation that Bev is insisting on playing. And I can understand why she wants to do that, because it kind of brings a bit of stability, and it also allows players to be really fluid and open in how they're trying to play. But for a player like Mimi, maybe she's getting sacrificed because there's only 2 spots, right? If you're playing 3 in the middle, there's maybe a world where you can see her playing, coming off the bench, even sometimes starting. I want to see her in the SheBelieves really showing herself and really playing her best football. You got to make it hard for a manager. Yes, maybe there's probably one position on the squad that you're looking at the back 3 and you kind of know, and maybe Zadorski's flirting with that spot. But the rest, you got to say, man, I want to make this difficult. I want to make this difficult for Bev Priestman. I feel like Mimi Aladu can go and do that. But when you're talking about Grosso as well, there were talks where I think Quinn and what they bring, the balance with Fleming, is the midfield. But Grosso has to look at this and say, look, man, like, I'm a quality midfielder. Yeah. It's not like she's playing out of position, right? She just has to do a different role. And I can understand, for example, if I have to just talk about myself for a minute, I remember in my career having to play a bit higher, like playing like an 8. And it wasn't really comfortable making those runs in the box. I was almost like, ooh, when do I do it? I'm not Frank Lampard. Like, I'm just more of a hard-nosed type of guy to get things going. But if your coach is asking something of you and there's a role to be filled, you almost want to be like, let me adopt a new personality a bit. Still bring what you bring. Julia Grosso is still a technician, but bring that intensity on the defensive end, because if there's something that you need and there's something that is being missed in this team, Julia Grosso can fill that void, and she could do that. So I think this is that time for those players to really step up and come to the forefront.
Ollie.
Just on Aladu quickly, I wanted to add, like, I hate to be the pessimist here, and I'm surprised that this is the case because she's having such a good season in Portugal, and I thought that it looked like there was a player there when we saw her at the Gold Cup. But if she's been left out of the 23 twice in a row, like, do we think at this point her chances of making the 18 are significant? I'm just not sure. Like, I think for whatever reason, and I'm sure a lot of people will disagree, and maybe they'll have some justification, but I think if Bev Priestman was seriously considering her right now, she would have brought her to this camp initially. Like, you don't make a player an injury replacement twice in a row, I don't think, if that's not kind of where you're at.
Yeah, it's a very good point, and it's one that one being a storyline that we will watch very closely at this weekend's game, and then Tuesday, whether it's for the title or in the consolation match. Both of them can be seen, of course, on One Soccer with full pregame, postgame, and halftime coverage on Match Day Live.